No, you're doing it right. You're doing work right. Oh God, 3 a.m. Well, as I go through everything, we have a couple hours, so I'll do my best to get through everything succinctly and make it clear so people who are kind of new to the discourse understand and people who are familiar with the discourse still get something out of it. Oh God, your AC is down. Oh, it was down before. Thank God you're not roasting anymore. Already spent too much money. Breakfast. It's 1 p.m. for me here. Okay. So I will get started. Me. Well, hello everybody. Welcome. It's nice to see everyone here and so many people here today. Obviously we'll be discussing anti-fandom, antis, anti-shippers, and anti-Fujoshi. And I'm here today with my poor little meow meow Kratos, who is best boy and is super angry. So first things first, I'm going to mute my phone because it just jingled at me. And we'll continue. So order of topics summary. We'll be going over just anti-fandom. Then we'll cover anti-shippers and antis, anti-Fujoshi. And then we'll get into some visual examples and discussion. And at the end, I'll share some academic resources and archives for you at your disposal. So I'm hoping all this helps and that you will get a lot out of this and at the very least leave with some useful resources. So first things first, disclaimer. Yes, there's a content warning because we'll be discussing some somewhat sensitive topics. I will do my best to be tactful with the discussion. Some of the screenshots that I show obviously will have like some of those sensitivities, particularly transphobia, but that's obviously just to show the extent of what's going on here and what people are actually saying. So I'm prioritizing sources from academics, looking at experts, taking it from them to the best I'm able to. And so I'm open. I always welcome more sources, more resources. If you see something I missed or something that I have left out or that contradicts something that you know, if you have a source, I'm more than happy to look at it as well as add it to my own archives so other people can also use it. And so I'll jump right into things and feel free to pop your questions into chat. And I won't be keeping up with chat right now, but mods are welcome to let me know if there's an important question that should be answered. Otherwise, I will answer all of them at the end because we should have plenty of time. So I'll get into it. So antis. Anti-fandom, literature about it has been around since at least the 90s. You know, we're going by Jonathan Gray here, and he started writing about that around that time, late 90s, early 2000s. And so in general, it focuses on fan behavior surrounding hate and dislike for basically any type of media, especially television shows and literary narratives. But when it comes to anti-fandom, there's a lot of fluidity with it. I actually emailed Jonathan Gray last year to ask him directly, you know, if he had some special formula for what makes, you know, an anti-fan, an anti-shipper, etc., based on some of the stuff that I was discussing. And he basically said that, you know, it's not a fixed state. Every fan is different. And so some people might like certain aspects of a show, but hate just a ship, or they hate certain tropes, etc. And shipping itself, as we see derived from relationshipping, is just deep emotional investment in fictional couples, and usually just to see those characters in a relationship with each other, particularly romantic. And anti-shippers have been around as a concept since, the early 2000s, early 90s. I know there were X-Files anti-shippers and plenty of other things happening in that regard. But when it comes to that, the focus was very heavily on just the ships themselves. You might get hate for liking a ship, or flamed in the ancient language. You would get flamed. But, obviously compared to now, it wasn't a moralistic, you should die, I'm going to give people your address kind of environment, So even though, people be like, oh, I hate Sasunaru, gross, bleh, thumbs down, have that stamp on your DeviantArt journal, anti-Sasunaru or whatever, anti-Tails Amy, whatever. It wasn't the present day issue where instead of just hating the ships, people are like, I hate anyone who likes this and I will make your life a living hell. So quite different. And to define terms, I'll start out with pro shippers and anti-antis, just because I think everyone's pretty familiar with that. Because I would assume most people are pro ship, even if they aren't aware of it, because it's just basically that you believe a person's actions in real life matter more than the fiction that they create or consume. And that consumption does not correlate to real life endorsement or their active behavior. Serial killer novelists aren't serial killers, etc. Gore artists aren't dismembering people secretly in their basement. So it's the same type of deal. And so with that, people take on the idea that it's up to you to curate your experience. Everybody comes across content they dislike or that upsets them, everyday life, but we can't control other people in that sense or demand that this or that does not exist at all, just because how we interpret it isn't makes us uncomfortable or upset. So antis largely identify, or they attempt to identify, as being like anti-pedophilia, incest, rape, abuse, anti-abuse. And so while they're like, they're usually fans of a show, and then they take it out on other fans in that show. So with anti-shipping, they will attack people, Genshin and K-Look, all of those ships, and it becomes quite awful. So usually it centers around believing that certain sexualized content will encourage negative behaviors, and that the existence of fictional media, if it invokes hate or disgust, any type of negative feeling, that does count as direct harm against someone, as it evokes, a real life response or emotional response. And so they'll often take those emotional responses as their extension for reality. Like I've seen some people say, like, well, pro shippers think that fiction doesn't affect reality. Well, why does fiction give you an emotional response? Checkmate. And it's like, well, okay, but I don't think the author is going to kill someone because of what they wrote. And that's the thing. They largely don't believe that violence can affect people's behavior the same way. They try to separate that a lot and make very clear lines demarcating that, even to the extent of saying that, oh, like, no, I think murder is more ethical than sexual abuse. Murder is more ethical than sexual abuse because, if you're dead, you don't have to live with the trauma, very much ignoring what got you to being dead in the first place. So, yeah, that's fun. But I'll show some examples of that later on. So first, we're going to do some fact checking. And here are some sources. Feel free to screenshot or whatever. I will be providing links to all of these sources at the end. But going with actual science, that's not true. So many different things contribute to how people respond to fiction. It has a lot to do with your culture. The context of the exposure is very important. Were you exposed to something harmless in a traumatic setting? That could cause a traumatic response. Or if you're exposed to something completely willingly on your own, and so it doesn't, cause you any distress compared to someone else. And basically, like we've seen before, it's like this doesn't indicate a wish to be sexually abused in real life. Sorry, I'm distracted. There's a woodpecker tapping on my wall. So anyways, back to the point. Yeah, as we can see, several down with Richter's here, it was important when it comes to sadomasochism or BDSM, things like that. Childhood trauma was neither sufficient nor necessary to develop interest in those behaviors. The vast majority of adults with a history of childhood abuse did not practice those behaviors, and the vast majority of practicers were not victims of child abuse. So, either or, somebody's interest in something doesn't always directly correlate to their trauma. So it's basically saying that, some people use it to cope, some people don't, but whatever their reason, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them or that they need an excuse. They don't need a psychological reason to be involved with something, or there isn't anything psychologically wrong with them if they like these things. And so what the major appeal is for, taboo fiction, all kinds of things, is just simulating other experiences, alleviating negative emotions, having a sense of agency and control. And there's no strict evidence that actually proves that exposure to obscene material will directly cause someone to engage in antisocial conduct. And one of the problems with anti-shipper methods and logic is that, as quoted by Bukowska here, disproportionately affects people from marginalized communities. So when you're actually contacting authorities and things like this, or trying to stop people, it's always marginalized people who are getting hurt the most and having the most issues. It's not the actual offenders. So to continue, similarities antis have with conservative groups is that they do not follow up with evidence to their claims. They focus on stirring up anxieties of what could potentially happen. They emphasize the disturbing or scandalous nature of certain fiction, and they don't have any sources or share any studies. And so things like 50 Shades of Grey or Game of Thrones, which were actually global occurrences and extremely, one might say, influential and popular, did that actually contribute to abuse or not? They believe fiction will make you do bad things. Religious language, sin, forgiveness, confession, telling people to report pro-ship activity from their friends, and also claiming that they'll save the children, and engaging with conspiracy theories. So one quote that stuck out to me while I was reading one of these things was the church's position was that while removal of such material in comic books specifically might infringe on an adult's right to read, good citizens should be willing to waive their rights in order to protect children. And that was a discussion happening in like the 1950s from churches. So they also believe pro-shipping is a disorder that somebody needs to recover from, similar to like porn addiction, and that violence is often the answer to these problems. So I put together some quotes from antis versus conservative groups to kind of put these side by side. And so you can take a look at some of them there, but basically things like the Hays Code, articles from fascists, written by nationalists themselves, as well as the lobbyist company Morality and Media, or NCOS, all believe that entertainment can be helpful or harmful to the human race, and that there should be no room for what's right or what's wrong. There should be no doubt. And a lot of this that we see today when it comes to anti-Fujoshi issues stuck out to me with the anti-rock debate, in that they associated, white men were associated with reason, and, women, children are more on the primitive scale, but also non-Western people. So present day, you get people saying things like, oh, Asians are all gross, Japanese people are pedophiles, et cetera, but not in my white Christian nation. So they feel like women need to be protected from themselves, children need to be protected from themselves, but not them, because they know better, they know best, they know the right way to behave. And as you can see at the bottom here, an entire culture could be infected by another culture. So a lot of times you see that when it comes to BL and what some antis call pro-shipper style artwork from specifically Japan, China, Russia. Like all fans from all of those countries are often targeted by being portrayed as people who like infect fandom, make it perverse or gross, evil. And it's just really interesting when you look through all of this type of writing to see all of the similarities. So to get into the anti-BL settlements and anti-Fujoshi stuff, we'll define terms real quick. So BL related terms, so most people know Fujoshi or female fans of BL. There's also an inclusion of the other languages that also use Fujoshi, and Fudanshi are male fans of BL, and Fujin are generally non-binary agender fans of BL. And this section is actually from my most recent paper that's in its final editorial stages, and I hope you'll be able to see it this fall. But basically, I'll read through this briefly because I tried to summarize all of the available resources that were in English that answer what Fujoshi actually is, which is the term originally referred to women and girls who are considered dedicated fans of boys' love media, and in Japanese originally meant lady or respectable woman or wife. However, if you change the fu character for lady to fu character for rotten, it creates a pun into rotten girl. And so basically, straight men categorized female BL fans as rotten for not having stereotypically feminine interests and traits, and specifically for indulging in queer narratives and sexuality, which they not only considered, somewhat perverse, like, oh, women shouldn't be interested in that. It was also like unproductive outside of their expected roles as what they were assumed to be heterosexual wives and mothers. And so they were framed as unattractive, antisocial, and 2chan Japanese forums are where they suspected that they first began using that around there around 2000. And then by the mid 2000s, it was just a mainstream term used for female BL fans. And so even though Fujoshi would say that BL subverts dominant patriarchal narratives, that it's much more complex, and there's a lot more going on in terms of gender, sexuality, and personal identity, they were still treated as abnormal and freaks, basically, you know, not respected or taken seriously, kind of like today. But by the late 2000s, they reclaimed it by transforming it into a food pun, with rotten taking on a fermentation connotation, so that they could now position themselves as more sophisticated than everyday consumers of raw, boring media. They made it more interesting, and they would ferment the original media, which was usually heterosexual and male-centric, by adding more complex queer flavors. So, for example, like yaoi media, a lot of the ships were based off of like TV shows for straight men. You know, you get things like Naruto and like early Gundam series and everything. They would take those characters and make them more interesting to themselves and others, but straight men didn't like it. And so on the other side, to get into where anti-Fujoshi come from, I'll cover gender critical rad femmes and define what fetishization actually means when it comes to gender criticals and anti-trans discussion, which is important. So gender criticals are they're anti-trans, and they believe trans identity is recent Western phenomenon that gets exported to other countries. They believe there are only two genders, male and female, and a person's gender solely aligns with their assigned sex at birth and can never be changed. And any identities that don't adhere to that strict binary are considered fetishes or paraphilias. They're like mental defects that need something that needs to be fixed, or something that's inherently wrong with the person. And so you'll see in gender critical groups, a lot of times they'll be associated with anti-kink, anti-pornography, and radical feminist groups. They're all of these groups are almost synonymous. They're basically the same, because they believe that pornography specifically, and any taboo, quote unquote, whatever they believe taboo to be, sexual depictions in fiction, don't only have the capacity to damage people's minds, but also encourage sexual abuse in the real world. And so a lot of that started around the 1980s, is when like the anti-porn movement picked up. And you see a lot of that mirrored in the anti-fan movement happening today, the Puritan, the fan cop discourse. And so a lot of times you'll see gender criticals refer to trans people as porn addicts or porn sick. And we also see that term used by some fanties as well, whether purposefully from rad femmes or not, whether they know it or not. And so to get to fetishization, the critique that BL and Fujoshi are sources of fetish is intrinsically linked to anti-trans ideology, basically because you'll see BL fetishizes gay men and Fujoshi fetishizes gay men, but the argument has been around since at least the 1970s, where you would hear women singling out trans women to say that they were fetishistic males who were trying to escape into faux womanhood. And so the act of fetishization, according to them, is both sexual objectification, obsession, or worship with the subject in question. So you see people say, They want to be yaoi boys. They want to be teenage pretty boys for trans men. When it comes to trans men, under this ideology, heterosexual female fujoshis who watch lots of sexual gay male content then come out as gay trans men, according to them. And they refer to fujoshi trans men as homophobic because they believe that trans men are delusional heterosexual women trying to force their way into gay male spaces, looking for relationships with them. And so here are the big ones. All of these screenshots are from Radfem forums or blogs specifically. So you'll see anti-rhetoric here. There's nothing wrong with age gaps and dating your teachers, but it's just fiction. Nothing is ever just fiction. Wake up. Age gaps are being normalized. That can teach girls it's okay because fiction never stays fiction for long. People are being indoctrinated through pornographic fiction. And these ones, a lot of times, all of these had to do with looking up how people were identifying Fujoshi, what they categorize Fujoshi as. So Fujoshis are deeply narcissistic. They don't want acceptance. They want submission. Lesbian anti, re-traumatizing through media is not a healthy coping mechanism. Exposing yourself is not healthy. And old mannequins, the anti, is also saying, even if they aren't the main ones harassing gay men over it, it's not just about important comics. It's about girls reading those comics and fetishizing gay men. So everything here is about brains have trouble differentiating fiction from reality. They're pulled into the trans vortex cult. Some people get so addicted to anime and pornography that they die after injecting illegal hormones into themselves. Okay. And another one here that I saw in real time was someone saying that, opposite sex attraction makes you straight. You need therapy and to stay 500 feet away from gay people because you're a heterosexual female fetishizing gay men. Oh, what fun. And here it leads into the discourse we see a lot on Twitter and Tumblr, where a lot of these things originated, is that people try to point out these earlier blogs that weren't necessarily secretive about what they were doing, at least when it comes to cis being oppressor. Fujoshi started calling themselves non-binary and gay trans men, and most of you just fell for it, huh? Trans men can't be men who love men, you fucking Fujo. You're not a trans boy, you're an average girl who read too much yaoi, etc., etc. Everything is porn addicts convincing themselves, delusion. And we see on the far left here, we have Purge Anti-Antis. What a subtle name. That was a very transphobic account back in the day, around 2016, around 2016-ish, 2017, or when these posts were made specifically, was that they purposefully spread gender critical rhetoric. It's like social justice warriors swallowed our thinly veiled gender critical statements, and they hate it and love it at the same time. They hate Fujoshi, and they were just trying to get transphobia out there, by calling people awful things, but making it seem like they weren't talking about trans people. Because I believe this was somebody direct messaging them, about Fujoshi, kind of like, oh, let's take him down together. And they're like, no, you won't like us because we're transphobic, quote unquote. Sorry. So not subtle at all. And just, I made a little thought chart here for both Fujoshi and BL, but basically these are the steps that the discourse goes through, getting all the way to Fujoshi fetishize gay men without any of the context, starting at the beginning, which was Trans men are self-hating and seek to escape from misogyny by becoming men. Transgender identity is a result of mental illness and fetishes. And porn addiction causes people to want to transition. And yaoi counts as porn addiction. Sexual abuse, BDSM are all employed to normalize abuse and pedophilia. And then it becomes BL, and all BL and yaoi have pedophilia, taboo, awful things, and Fujoshi are just young women who ID as trans men. So they trying to get the gay boyfriends they want because they read too many fake comics, and it's just a fucking mess. So you see how you get from one side to the other, and you'll see people a lot on Twitter calling Fujoshi white women for whatever reason, or saying they're mentally ill, or they're all straight women. Well, that's where it comes from. And same with the BL here, as I was talking about before, is just talking about BL harms gay men. A lot of it comes from these anti-femme roots here. It's like anti-woman, anti-femme things that they just keep perpetuating, It's not just fiction. And yeah, like the boyfriends fiasco, written by an Asian trans man. A lot of the anti-trans posts that people were putting around were like coming from anti-trans gay men, where we aren't all doing each other's hair and painting our nails. No gay man acts like this. No gay men like this. No gay men talk about their feelings, etc., etc. It's all the Fujos and the yaoi. They don't understand what real men like, and so that's where it comes from. And this is not to say that BL is free from critique, or that people can't express their opinions about it, or if they think something is harmful. But it's very important to realize how all of the previous points have perpetuated a hostile environment for years, literal years, in which people aren't going into the discussion neutral at all. It's not starting at neutral, it's starting at misinformation, hatred, energy, as you can see by some of the wonderful screenshots here from some people who also read BL. But yeah, it's like you see examples of abuse against queer men, you see insults, you see threats of harm, murder, arson, setting people on fire. There's posts about lynching people or sexually assaulting people just because they like to read BL manga. So there's wildly plenty of ways that it gets fucked up. And as for one of the most common examples, looking for recommendations of gay manga written by actual queers, not BL or yaoi. Doesn't matter if gay men write BL and yaoi. Doesn't matter if queer women are writing BL and yaoi. That's not real gay stuff. So it needs to be ridiculed or excluded, and it doesn't count. So none of the discourse previously helps it, and you can see how it leads to such a hostile culture and environment of wishing death upon people just because of what they read. So, visual examples of previously discussed topics, the xenophobia that we mentioned before, that this type of shipping belief, ideology, behavior brings you to, is just a lot of racism, xenophobia, making jokes about war crimes. And the key part here is the engagement as well. It's not just a few people, it's tens of thousands of people behaving like this. Thinking that these are appropriate ways to respond to people because they feel that they have the moral high ground. I'm sure some of these will look familiar to you, especially if you've gone through my archives before. And this one in particular, anti-shippers mirroring religious conservative language specifically in the bottom right corner. Daily reminder to check if any of your mutuals are pro shippers. Please do, because it's surprising how many of them there are. Stay safe. And in the comments, there were people tagging their friends publicly to say, "Are you a pro shipper?" And they're like, "No, of course not." They're like, "Phew, good, because I would have to dump you." Not very normal behavior. People who think they're self-righteous enough and know what's best. I'm lucky because I know how to tell right from wrong, but a lot of people do not have that privilege. Who is a lot of people? I would like to know. And cases like this, where they say, "I saw you relapsed, into pro shipping. I hope you can find a proper coping mechanism, thoughts and prayers." And they're like, "I'm trying so hard to get out of pro shipping because I feel disgusting, but I always come back to it. I just want to be a good person." Threatening a 13-year-old in the middle here because they were a pro shipper. And then when they renounced pro shipping, everybody said, "This is a step forward. I'm glad you're recovering. I'm so proud of you that you can go move on from this. You can still have redemption. Everything will be okay. These children pro shippers deserve a second chance. They don't know what's right or wrong, and we should help them, not let them go down the wrong path." Someone else saying, "I hope nobody I know sees this. I get pro ship urges. I find it disgusting." It's like, I hope none of my friends see that. And one of the saddest ones was by a 13-year-old or 13, 14-year-old when the post was made, but basically publicly, public confessional here, saying that they had intrusive shipping thoughts and it's not healthy. I want it to be normal, but I know it's not okay. And somebody else said, "I had those thoughts too, but I told myself it wasn't okay and removed myself from that." Like, that's not normal teenage behavior, of just ships for, like, we're talking about 7th, 8th, 9th graders publicly confessing their shipping sins and saying that they're having, impure thoughts. An environment is with no, psychological professionals here, does not help anyone. And particularly second to last, conspiracy theories, definitely. It's like, pro shipping causing you to sexually abuse animals. You're like, I would like to see a source on that study. And some people thinking that, therapists endorse pro shipping, so there must be something wrong with the system. They need better adults and better therapists because, and this one down here, this one at the very bottom with all the red boxes, was from, some of you might recall, Cookie Kingdom. Somebody's little sister was shipping some, I guess, bad cookies, and she was like 10 years old, and this kid who was like 15 or 17 posted about it, and at least 2/3 of the responses were people assuming that she might have been sexually abused just because she shipped the cookies. And so, like, it kind of tells you the state of fandom right now, where it's like, oh my God, she pro shipped. Something's wrong. You need to get the authorities involved, that kind of thing. And assuming that everyone's a pedophile, everything's a groomer ring. And off to the left, pro shippers are all mentally ill people. They're porn addicts, et cetera, et cetera. And on the far right, can someone explain to me why drawing murder or gore is okay and it's not the same thing as other stuff? And people saying, well, the difference is that people will not go murdering each other in real life. Okay, source. Concepts like sexual abuse are all very doable, very easily. And these heavily influenced kids at a young age. It's like, they know that killing someone is bad, I think, because somebody told them not to hurt people, but they aren't remotely aware of sexual things, which just shows the core issue being education and not people are born knowing that murder is wrong. It's like people are born being taught literally everything that they do. And the last one, trigger warning for violent threats and comments about dismemberment, but I won't really read many of these out loud, but like looking at a lot of these posts, you'd think you're looking at like alt-right blogs, because people are taking joy in wanting to physically abuse and even sexually harm people because they want a real person to experience the abuse. So that's quite awful. If I cut out at all, it's just said my internet connection is unstable, so FYI. But basically, yeah, that's the long and short of it. And so I put together these resources for everyone. You can also screen cap this. I'll go through some of them, but you can find me in these places here these are where I'm most active. And our database is very good. So I will. Can you see the website? Let's see. New share with the website. New share with the website. Is it popping up? There it goes. Okay.
Also, while we are taking a quick break,
I'll go through this real quick, but I put together this resource for all of you, for everyone, anyone who has ever been bullied or harassed or gone through any type of agony just because of what they read or enjoy reading. The key part up here is the database of site resources. If you want research information, I have a spreadsheet here, and it's every single thing I have read, every single thing I have skimmed over or used or watched, put together all in one place for everyone to provide themselves with resources to empower themselves, self-educate, and also provide proof to people. Even if those people don't want it or don't like it, you have the comfort of knowing that, yes, psychological professionals understand you, agree with you, you're not broken, you're not secretly bad or a freak. All of this is here for you. So the first tab shows everything all together. Some of these have links connected to them. Others have PDFs connected to them if the PDF was available publicly. And you can see, you can arrange it by things like year. So the earliest around like 1970s, and they go all the way to present day. You can search by format, region. So if you're looking for just Western stuff, or if you're looking for Asian LGBTQ history, specific countries, and there's tabs here, or tags specifically, sorry, that kind of give a summary of what it covers. So you can find all of the censorship stuff here, all of the psychology resources, everything relating to BL, Yaoi, Danmei only, and as well as gay commie, just LGBTQ resources in general, regardless of where they're from, fandom specific, sapphic resources, queer women's resources, gay men's resources in here. So I have the main hub, and just in general, the website has a lot of resources. I also put together there's definitions in here. You can send this to people when you don't have the spoons to deal with arguing with someone, basically, or if someone's actually genuinely curious. I laid out all of the misconceptions. I put in a ton of quotes directly from articles and from interviews. I did all of the work for you so you do not have to continue suffering. So I addressed a lot of the main arguments and everything, etc. And all of this too is just to put together a resource for people who also want to do their own research and contribute to things. You're more than welcome to use this and share it, etc. In anti-Fujoshi tab specifically, there is a whole section relating to radfems and like anti-trans ideology and how these things so specifically I linked to web archives so you won't give the website any traffic. I linked to web archives of people directly talking about these things, so it's like, yes, it's real, they're discussing it right now. And I update things when I can. And also linking to how crypto turfs disseminate propaganda. So posts from themselves, how to do it, its strategy and everything directly from the horse's mouth, is that the phrase? Along with common phrases, just really summarized, but as well as relevant articles and books discussing trans history, anti-trans bigotry, anything that had to do with what I was writing about, or that would explain different things, or deconstruct like anti-porn movements and radfem movements. It's all here for you. So, and as well, where is it? Yeah, Kaylin Conrad's video, Inside a Cult, Gender Critical, is very good. They have a 3-part series. Each one's about an hour long, but it breaks down all of this stuff, and it's extremely informative and well put together. They went undercover in parents' gender critical Facebook group and put together a whole thing, deconstructing how these people thought, how they treated kids, and how they would make their arguments, which were always inherently, racist, sexist, misogynist, like the women can't compete with men at chess because we're just too stupid, guy. It's like not really making any making a good case for yourself here. It's just like, oh, my pea brain is too small to play chess with a man. But yeah, protect women. I'm protecting women. I was like, way to go backwards. Like, you watch the Queen's Gambit and then you come here and you're like, no, it was all wrong. She shouldn't have been there. Sorry, brain too full of gay boys to be smart. Lil. Yeah, but basically it's quite a mess, but I dug through all of this stuff so other people could use these resources, and I hope you find these helpful. And I almost forgot, I also include let's see, I also include in the anti-fan archive too busy. Yeah, Greg, you know what we're talking about. Too busy being a hoe to be good at chess. In the anti-fan archive, I have screenshots and quotes. This section specifically, how anti's arguments mirror conservative groups. I have the Hays Code. We have the National Center of Sexual Exploitation, previously called Morality and Media. I went through all of the board members to see what they actually believed and what they stood for. Shocker, they're all like fascists that think pornography will destroy the world and trans people or perverts, you know. It's like if you're getting your arguments from people like this, it's not a good look. I have direct quotes from them, direct quotes from people that they're affiliated with and support, quotes from the websites that also mirror a lot of anti-arguments, specifically some posts about 50 Shades of Grey were specifically like they kept trying to argue that the main female character is like a stand-in for a child. She's actually a child, and 50 Shades of Grey is actually pedophilia. And I'm like, wow, you guys just got this right from, yeah, everybody. What? Exactly. They're trying to normalize, it's insane. Yeah, infantilizing women, yes. Yeah, but it has a bunch of minor coded, concept like women is baby, post minor. I'm a post minor graduate, adult child here. Oh my god. But yeah, so things like this really stick out when you read them because you're like, am I reading an auntie's manifesto of like it's just terrible. But yeah, it's like everything is pedophilia, everything has right. Yeah, why do they need to insert children to everything? It's like, man, I wasn't thinking about any of that until you said something. Yeah, projection. And yeah, one of the things I noticed too from NCOS discussing the dangers of pornography, same with aunties, is that you can still use adult pornography to groom your victims. So adults can't, that's why adult porn can't exist. No source, of course, that adult pornography leads to viewing child pornography. Okay. Children imitate what they view in adult media with other children, so it shouldn't exist for adults. And a big red flag I saw here. Yeah, you're right, Ishana. But a big thing I saw here that I thought was a red flag was this particular quote. For the most part, however, these same entities have turned a blind eye towards the explosion of hardcore adult pornography on the internet and elsewhere. Those who fight sexual exploitation of children, but who turn their backs to the adult pornography problem, are making a tragic mistake. He explains why it is a mistake for the Justice Department and FBI to focus their energies almost exclusively on child molesters and child pornography because of limited resources. Excuse me? What? Yeah, what? No, he's like, no, it's a mistake. And it's like, no, don't put that towards actual child abusers. You should be focusing on adult pornography because that could also be used possibly to abuse children in the study I don't have. God. But yeah, I just want you to know what these people think is important. Yeah, candy and toys. Christ. But yeah, it's like this is the kind of stuff that's going on and the arguments they're making, and where you can kind of see the red flag showing up because they're not talking about church abuse. They're not talking about the foster care system abuse. They're not talking about like coaches or like Matt Gaetz or any of the politicians and like child brides in the Republican states abuse. It's adult porn for consenting adults. That's the problem. But don't look at that other stuff. We don't talk about that. We don't think about that. The porn is to blame. Like, okay. Yeah, Matt Walsh. Yeah, no, don't worry. Everything's fine in reality. It's fine. But yeah, to continue from this in this cursed place. Yeah, we're like, welcome to the cursed lands where everything is cursed. Some quotes from articles also mirroring like anti-arguments is that, these games promote sexual harassment, assault, abusive marriages. Despite being cartoons, the content in these games is far from harmless. Animated porn fuels sexual addiction. It's time we recognize that animated or cartoon porn present in video games is equally as harmful as regular porn. Okay. Whether fictional or not, games trivialize sexual violence, normalize abuse, decrease empathy for real-life victims, etc., etc. Sounds like a them problem. Read the two. Are you okay? Puts my hand on the computer screen. But yeah. And another article too, talking about Tumblr's porn ban, was talking about how, they're known for fandom and fan fiction. This content is highly pornographic and sometimes even more violent and degrading than visual porn, but also it targets a female demographic with messages that normalize intimate partner violence. So yeah, you're okay, Snoo. But so there's all of this stuff here. There's also an entire image archive where I went through all of these websites. I tried to search as specifically as I could and be thorough, National Prayer Day, all of these things covered. I don't know if there are any laws or fines about that. I think I feel like if they called like actual 911 and were like, come to the house, there's Lolly on the computer, then they might be charged with a false, whatever, a false report, false statement, something like that. Do we have anywhere where all of the earlier questions might have been kept? If there's any mods there. I want to make sure I don't miss your questions when we go through stuff. Oh, I forgot about this one. Read and weep, boys. If you read porn, you're gay. They said it was a highly effective argument because men are getting each other off through women. I'm like, okay. I'm sorry, I forgot that. Ooh. Girls, is it gay to watch porn with women? Only if another man told you about it. Thanks, yeah. No, it's only if another man told you about it or gave you his porn. Pornography is homosex. Clearly. Okay. Oh, there's another good one. Just play the Benny Hill theme while I go through all of these. Even your own. Ooh. Anyways, yeah. I took screenshots, as proof. I web archived all these pages as well, but this is just so people kind of have a visual examples to see, like, porn addiction ruins your brain. You guys are so funny. Man, is it gay to be straight? Yeah, this one is them celebrating like Hoonie Pop getting like canned or whatever, something on Steam. But like a real victory for abuse. You're like, okay. Did somebody put together any questions that there were? I was like, they're getting lost in all this comedy that's happening in the chat. Oh my God. Well, I have a few questions. I'll wait on those, but yeah, feel free to post questions you have. But I have a few that I saved from people on Twitter. Has this phenomenon been looked at by anyone outside of fandom? It's starting to be, also because of the article that I personally wrote, which was uh, hate narratives. I've been contacted by psychologists that were interested. People have sent it to their own psychologists to explain what they've been dealing with, if they have, trauma from being harassed, etc., by antis and anti-shippers and things like that. The article here. Thank you. And you're welcome. I'm very happy you liked it. Let's see, research gate. Research gate. Yeah, they're like, pro shippers are a blight on this earth and a danger to children. And you're like, okay, let's look into that. And they're like, what are you, a fucking freak? Get a job. Thank you, Katarina. Yeah. When it was COVID time, I needed something to consume myself, and that was it. Get a job. This is my job. The funny part is it's like my side hobby. It's like I don't get paid for this. I have a full-time job. I also work on my comic as well. I just did this for fun. No. I did it for satisfaction, to actually like get answers, because I was tired of not knowing. It's that GIF. What is the truth? I had to know, because I was seeing so much I was seeing so many anti-fandom narratives and everything, and people saying all this stuff about Fujoshi like 5-ish years ago, that I just had to do a deep dive because it was getting insanely out of hand, as I'm sure you're all aware. How pro ship and let shipped races as a sealed. Ah, that one. Ship is used. I feel like the thing is your question from Ace the Invader. Have you included in your research how pro ship and let ship is used by racists as a shield for extremely racist works against marginalized fans? And are we talking about fanfic here? It's like, I would actually like to see a broader discussion about that, because yeah, fan fiction. I think one of the most important aspects about it is that people come from different sides when it comes to the term ship and let ship, and like quote unquote pro ship. From my personal experience, and a lot of people I know, people would just use that for queer ships. It was exclusively a queer ship thing. We weren't exposed to any racism or anything like that. And at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, I can't control people and what they write. It's like that's their own can of worms to deal with if they're writing stuff that makes me upset, Yeah, problematic shit. And like, I think it's important to recognize that entire aspect of the narrative is that ship and let ship has also been used by queer people to like tell homophobic people off as well. And there should be a meeting in the middle where there can be a discussion about like those nuances. Because I've seen a lot of people say like, oh, pro ship just means that you endorse racism. And it's like, that's the farthest thing from the truth. And I'm like, if we're talking about like racist works against marginalized fans, is it like, are you talking about people writing targeted things to make people deliberately upset versus like somebody including certain tropes in their literature that you read and you're like, ew, okay, this is kind of fucking weird or fucked up, but it's not going to ruin my life kind of thing. Is Ace still here? Yeah, as Citrus Khan said, ship and let ship refers to acknowledging that you cannot control other people's thoughts and feelings, and you cannot possibly know the reason why somebody is writing something. It's like, it's one thing if they're targeting a specific real person, or if they're sending things to you to deliberately upset you, or like people who draw specific things for the expressed purpose of making people upset is like different than people who are just like in their shitty little corner minding their business and just kind of like doing their own thing that people find and they're like, oh my God, and then they start go after this person who was like not trolling people, I should say. Is the difference between trolling people and being like, I can't wait to trigger the snowflakes, versus somebody who's just like doing their own thing. 400K block list. That's nice to hear, Kendra. How did the religious moralizing become the norm within queer fandom? Based on what fandom elders are saying, this was a safe space. Was there an event that happened to cause this? That to blame Tumblr misguided, like social justice? Rad femmes is the short answer, the one word answer. Because I was there when it was written. Is basically that, as I was discussing before, they believe that pornography can warp your mind, it can harm you, etc., etc. You would get a lot of that in radfem spaces, and you still do, but it was, people were intertwining it with like, oh, where are those posts? They are here. Yes. Here's some older posts I'm going to go through, but basically that's when they started, going, oh, if you like this kink, you see anti-kink, anti-BDSM, women don't know what's good for them. They're actually advocating for their own abuse, blah, blah, blah. It's the same thing like, oh, like people who are taking control of rape narratives, like you don't actually know what you're doing. Exposing yourself is not a coping mechanism, blah, 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 and so like early Tumblr posts, and you would see people talking about this stuff, also related to like fandoms like Steven Universe. God, what was the other one? But like, yeah, it would turn into like, if you ship Pearl with Mayor Dewey, you hate lesbians. And like, if you ship these two characters, you endorse abuse because they have a complex relationship. If, if it was like every week with Steven Universe, because the characters were actually nuanced and complex, and each one of them was capable of making mistakes. I remember each week, like there was a different character that needed to be canceled. It was like, Pearl is great. Pearl is the devil spawn. Garnet is great. Oh, this character is actually an abuser. Just kidding. So that's where the root of all of this like terror came from. What kind of post is this? To me, I think things like slapping on the butt can be a slippery slope. What wording? Even if there's no malicious intent, it can normalize a behavior pattern of violence being rewarding. Like, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. Yeah, same for me, shoe puff. Slappery slope. But yeah, all of these things as we're back to Radfem posts. Let's see. Oh, a good question I got was what do you consider the best way to deal collectively and individually with anti-phenomenon and current harassment culture in fandom? Very important. I think again the biggest thing is just education. Just throw sources at people. The people who actually do care about bettering the world will read them. There are plenty of people who have already changed their minds. I know people personally who have thanked me for sending them stuff, and they're like, I didn't realize how toxic what I was saying or thinking was. There's people, like outside of my experience who've also said like they got out of anti-shipping after some event or realizing something. And a lot of it had to do with just being out in the real world, unironically, and education. So like actual psychology, actual proof, and I think the best way to combat that type of environment is just constantly educating people and yourself, and not giving into that type of behavior. Let's see. Mm-hmm. Yeah, somebody asked, why am I seeing a rise in no kink at Pride, rad femmes? Why do people think violence is okay but not sexual topics? That's funny because there's actually a post on the website that covers that exact thing where somebody was like, I mean, in a rad femme form, they're like, well, violence is different because reasons. Let's see. And it's there's healthy fantasy and unhealthy fantasy. Here it is. The genres they choose are more telling than the hobby itself. I don't care if someone reads or plays video games. I only care if they're reading some bizarre niche erotica or revenge gore, blah, blah, blah. And somebody said, I agree with the genre things, but even then, I'm hesitant to draw hasty conclusions. I know a couple of people who are really into violent movies because they're really into special effects and makeup art. Yeah, it couldn't be the violence. It's just the special effects and the makeup art. But I can't defend porn or bizarre niche erotica, though. And it's like, you always need a moral reason to engage with these things. Yeah, most of them are so removed from violence in real life, it doesn't register when they threaten a real person. Somebody in the murder argument factor was saying that, yeah, if I had trauma related to murder, my opinion would probably be different, which was basically acknowledging that, like, oh, yes, like, this is definitely a thing that could harm people, but it doesn't harm me, so I don't care. Someone else said, I'd like to hear thoughts and experience about self-proclaimed safe adults and how it exacerbates the issue with minors in adult spaces. I think it's important to discuss the duality of good intentions and adding to the problem. Yes. I think that is one of the biggest problems. I discussed it on my Twitter in a thread. like a week or two ago that it is a real problem because saying like insisting that younger people have a seat at like it's like you want to put a seat at the porn table, it's the only way to really word it. Um, so they have an opinion on it. It makes them feel like they're entitled to that, but not just like to argue with adults, but just putting themselves in danger in general. There have been people who have said that, like, I've had minors come to me and I said, why are you doing this? And they said, I feel responsible for people who are younger than me and who might not know better to, fight the pro shippers. And it's like, that's not safe. Let's see here. There it is. There's one. Yeah. Yeah, they said, oh, it'd definitely be dangerous. I do this a lot. And the adult said, you shouldn't, but why? I feel like I have a moral obligation to look out for people who are younger than me. I'm nearly an adult, and there are people younger than me who get preyed upon who I feel like I should look out for. But, trying to dunk on a pro shipper, like, I don't think that's going to help. DMing somebody that you think is a predator isn't a productive environment. No, I didn't want to download that. Yeah. Okay. Hmm. Oh yeah, this one was interesting. I think the main question should be, would you want a pro shipper around minors, your child, your siblings, or pets? If a pro shipper decided to work at a vet clinic or as a teacher or another job with animals and children, like, would you want them in would you want a pro shipper in your neighborhood? They could be anywhere. It's like because of everybody's obsessed with trying to find zoophiles. And it's the furry arguments, it's the furry discourse. It is just straight homophobic shit from the 60s, Shupuff. I'm the pro shipper in the neighborhood. I'm a pro shipper sitting at the bar. Oh, God. Yeah, I walk up to a guy with a microphone and a news crew. Sir, are you aware that there are pro shippers in your neighborhood? Are your animals safe? Pro shipping in my Christian server. No. Sonic is 15. Stop sexualizing him. Oh, God. Yeah, then you start to get into things when people sexualize the adult versions of characters. That's sussy, you guys. That's sussy. It's sussy, you guys. What do you mean speed? What do you mean speed? Does he run so fast that they get younger? Is this like a black hole theory? Sonic might be 25, but his feet are both like. Why are you doing that? What are you talking about? No, not the transvortex. God. Ooh. Yeah, like who is this person? Fiction is basically a copy paste of reality. I'm like, damn, is Kakashi Sensei out there right now? Shit. I gotta get his number. people cry at movies because they are sad. Fiction affects reality. Okay, though, but Denko, did you see, the guy, what is his name? Adam Ellis, the guy who made that comic, went on like a massive like anti-lolly rant and like mocked sexual abuse victims because it was easy. And he forgot that everybody turned on him for making that Sonic and Pikachu comic. It's here on the thing. It was like this whole fucking mess. So yeah, it's like even people who have been like mobbed by anti-shippers can still use the same cheap rhetoric just because it's easy for them. Yeah, everyone else is the bad person. Yeah, this was him mocking these people who are victims. And he was like saying like, no, the Sonic thing was okay because it was funny. And I'm like, well, what? Are we doing the South Park argument? We're doing the South Park argument. Yeah. And of course, like some people had to go in and be like, why don't you go abuse a child? And you're like, that's not the kind of argument that you make because child abuse isn't a joke. Yeah, can we focus on the fact that they actually endorse like real life fascism and like ignore the lolicon here? The lolly. Because again, it's like, yeah, it's just like saying, it's like when people say all anime fans are like perverts, all anime is hentai, etc. All anime fans are smelly otaku. It's like, okay, let's focus on the core issue here and not the content, not the fictional content. Everything is normalizes, synthesizes, roboticizes abuse. Danko. Yeah, what would you guys like to hear me talk about? We got a whole 30 minutes left. No, Kendra. Oh no, not cardiac arrest. Whew. Call the ambulance. Okay, I'll cover the safe adult BS and then I will cover Heartstopper and then I will answer what my favorite BL is. Okay, so when it comes to the safe adult BS, yeah, because I started that and then it got on a tangent. It's the issue is making them feel like they have a seat at the table discussing, pornography basically. That's what's happening here. It's like saying like children should be able to argue with adults about pornography. And it's like even if you have the best intentions, if you mentally think, you approach the scenario as like it going the best that it possibly could, it's still a harmful environment because they're not factoring in kids that are, they're not factoring in the reality of it. There are kids who will admit to infiltrating discords. I remember there were some who were saying like, oh, I'm pretending to be an adult and I got into this private Discord and then I leaked this other adult's like porn to prove to everyone that they were drawing freaky shit. And I'm a hero amongst my friend group, you know. And we're getting into the vigilante territory here of like, one of the key issues, you know, when you look at an actual book talking about child abuse is that like when it comes like concerned civilians should never be involved in any case or proactive investigation, you know. They start to take on this vigilante justice cloak, and they're not even going after actual predators. They're just going after people that they know or think make weird art, and thinking that makes them like an officer of the God ordained law. And I was checking chat, and yeah, basically, like it says here, is when it comes to people who are well-intentioned, like poorly trained individuals will make mistakes, judgment errors. They could jeopardize an entire prosecution. In the worst case, the people involving themselves are actual offenders and using it as a way to justify getting access to this content, this media, you know. And one of the key issues with that, let's see, I know there is an issue in here because it's like there are some adults who are like, oh, it's fine, you know, somebody sent this to this person, this blog is still active. They're saying basically minors are pretending to make map accounts to identify maps. It's like To Catch a Predator, but with aunties being the one catching the predators, you know. And they're like, it's okay because adult aunties can step in, you know. There's pretty much always an adult auntie nearby, even if the pedo doesn't realize that. Like, you're not an official police investigation, you know. This isn't a TV show. This is just randos, you know, getting together with some random teenagers and being like, yeah, let's chase out the pedophiles. And like, it's just a disaster waiting to happen to catch a fiction enthusiast. Hannah. And it's like, and there's other cases too where like somebody else here was like, you're being taken advantage of. My DMs are open if you need to talk, because this is extremely self-destructive behavior. And it's so sad to see children fall for pro shooters BS, you know. Like you don't like, even if somebody has good intentions, it's like they don't even realize that they're inserting themselves into a minor's personal life and, you know, saying like, and like bringing up sexual topics with them and being like, oh, this is appropriate, you know. It's the same thing with that 12-year-old who those 25-year-olds were harassing. They were like, I'm so ashamed of her. We tried to help her leave the pro ship community and she was trying. We were all helping her. But then she made this post, you know, she's disgusting, and then tagging everyone who followed her. This is a 12-year-old, by the way, you know, and they're like, why are people asking why adults are friends with a 12-year-old? I ask her why her friends like child abuse and fiction, you know. It's like she's the only one being a responsible adult by trying to get this child out of pro shipping, you know. And it's like, this is the type of environment people are making. I had like a 14-year-old come into one of my discussions once, you know, unannounced, of course, with no age in their bio. And like, I asked them, they said something about a topic they didn't understand. And I asked about, okay, what about Game of Thrones? And they said, my mom doesn't let me watch Game of Thrones. And I was like, oh God. I was like, not again. This is happening again. And like, I told them, I was like, you shouldn't and put yourself in these conversations. It's not appropriate or safe because you don't know who you're talking to, including me or anyone else. And then they just kept talking to me. So I had to block them and tell everyone else in the discussion to block them because they were like 14 or 15. And it's giving them this false sense of security that they're like justice heroes, that nothing bad can happen to them. And like people are just ignoring the issue with like actual predators being outed in anti-spaces. Meanwhile, some people act like, no, you're just trying to distract from the abuse of making it about pro shippers and antis. The whole pro shipper and anti debate is based on, does this make you a child abuser? It's like, this isn't subtle. Like this person, it was Hexam Fiend, publicly admitting that them and their ex-partner were sexually inappropriate with minors and teens as young as 13 as an adult, but previously they'd made posts that were like, pro ships don't interact, creeps, pedos stay away. And they made a post saying that, yes, I have a Discord server, but do not join if you're a freak. I do not support or allow people who are pro ship or like feral, not safe for work. Stop joining and then getting shocked when we check your socials and you get kicked for being weird. Like this language is used by people who have self-admittedly groomed minors, and you can't just ignore it. Like this person was defending it like, I've seen pro shits already turn this into a debate. Can we not do fandom discourse on groomed children? The whole focus of all of this discourse has always been on, does it groom children? Antis are bad or whatever. Can we focus on the bigger picture, even though they're an adult that has a note that says people 15 to 17 can interact with them? It's like it's like, how am I supposed to take you at face value and assume you have good intentions when somebody who was posing as an anti and making it seem like they're a safe space from freaks and had a large minor follower base? You're like, can we not make it about discourse when that discourse was likely used to keep people in a false sense of security? And they'll say things like this as well. This is a notorious account that I've followed for a couple years. Like, let's see. Since the majority of people don't hold the pro-ship ideology, obviously there's going to be a larger proportion of antis who act like groomers than pro-shippers because the base proportion isn't equal. If somebody really wanted to find the rates of groomers, I'm sure it would be an equal ratio or slightly higher on the pro-ship side. But I don't think those statistics are possible. Then what makes anti-shipping better? What makes it safer? How is that proving that your space is free of freaks, apparently? Obviously, someone who's speaking against being a pedo would eventually be revealed as one. That's kind of how shit goes in life with literally anything. The difference is that every pro shipper is factually confirmed to be a pedophile. Okay, so then you should be extremely vetting your, anti-spaces and telling all minors to never speak to an adult ever, including other adult antis, because you never know who could be a predator. But they're not doing that. They're saying, no, they should be allowed to sit here at the table with all the grown-ups arguing about sex. It's like they're just it's this false equivalence of like, okay, but I think personally that every pro shipper is a predator. So ultimately, their side is worse because they have more predators than we do, even though we have predator. There are far more examples of pro shits being preds than antis, against citation needed. And we talk about predatory as fiction or like actually grooming people. Antis can be preds, but the community as a whole would have less than people who think fictional grooming is hot. Again, fiction versus reality. They're like, there can be antis who are preds, but of course there would be less than the community that thinks it's hot in fiction. It's like saying there are murderers in the anti-community. We have serial killers, but of course we'll have less serial killers than the ones that think that murder in fiction is okay. It's like, okay, that's not the best. That's not the best argument, but whatever. Whatever you think is best in that regard. Yeah, false equivalency at its worst. These were some of the examples that I addressed in my paper relating to safe spaces as well. Was a particularly heinous account. 2 accounts I found. Thank God they censored the images. But while I was just researching anti-ship accounts, anti-shipper accounts, whatever, trying to find logic and things like that, I found at least 2 different accounts that would occasionally post like child sexual exploitation material censored, and then tell people the name of the account that it's on so they could report it. And a lot of people were like, yeah, I repeat, do not interact with them or look at their content. It is exploitative and there are victims. But they're going to link this to other teenagers, to report it and distribute it. Like, Pro-ship was tagged. This is all like, pedo lives don't matter, pedo hunters, pedophilia isn't a sexuality. This is an anti-shipper account, and they have over 2,000 followers on Instagram. And somebody here as well says, self-exposure to emotionally upsetting content. How's the police not been involved? I'm going to puke. The captions, it just brings me to tears. Like, all these people are exposing themselves to child abuse, like real abuse. These are real children they're just distributing it to like other teenagers, etc., etc. This is disgusting, but there are some accounts that are actually decoys to lure pedos so the police would be able to find them quickly. I'm like, what do you mean, like your account linking people to this shit? And it's like, yeah, again, violating the victim, also putting children in danger, putting people in like psychological harm, like someone is like, I feel like I'm going to throw up, etc. And like, here's another instance where they publicly acknowledged mislabeling an innocent person a pedophile. They're like, it has come to our attention that the person who sent the tip had been misinformed. Shocking. We were too eager to crusade and humbly ask for people to stop sending so-and-so death threats. What we've done is unacceptable, but of course it didn't make them stop from making claims about other people. And there was what was the other account as well? Yeah, this other account also was they were posted account names. Yeah, the next slide listed at least 56 of the accounts I counted. And then I reported both of these posts because that's all I could do, because, distribution. And then I just like closed it and make sure like nobody else knew where to find these accounts. But they have a lot of minors following them, and they're like, it's actually traumatic. It's not fiction. It's like, it's making minors feel responsible for their own abuse and the abuse of other children. And it makes them feel like they have a responsibility to get involved, so that they end up putting themselves in harm's way, where they're actually abused because they're either joining adults they think are safe in the crusade against harmful media, or they're traumatizing themselves by viewing or distributing actual illegal, jailable, offensible content without realizing the severity of the issue. And like, all of it's just really bad. It's like they shouldn't, like, it makes you feel old, but you're like, when I was in 7th grade or when I was in high school, I wasn't trying, wasn't worried about chasing predators or obsessed about what makes a predator, et cetera, blah blah blah. I was just vibing. I was watching Yu-Gi-Oh. I was drawing like Bakura holding hands with Yami Bakura. That was scandalous back in the day. And it's like I can't imagine being white knighted into a group of people, a group of kids trying to expose predators and feeling like, they have to do it, or it's like a hobby, you know? Yeah, Denko. They've watered down the concept of CSM by comparing it to fiction to the point that they see real abuse photos the same as drawings. It reminds me of that time where people ask for proof. They'll be like, oh, well, we need proof because how are people supposed to know that, they're actually drawing nasty things? And you're like, you can't get proof of that because it's an actual crime compared to lolicon drawings. Those won't send you to jail. These will, and get you like on a FBI watch list. Where is that? But yeah, there are a lot of arguments about people saying like, well, they won't believe us if we don't provide proof. I'm like, that's for the authorities to decide if it's actual abuse material of a real person, not a fucking anime character, So it's like that's the major problem here with the safe space thing and the adult thing. And people always try to argue that Twitter should be safe for children because companies are allowed to collect your data at age 13 when the website itself allows like pornography. I don't know why they want to argue so much and be like, no, let them be on the site that has the porn, like same with Tumblr, etc. So it's like they should be here. They deserve to be here. And I'm like, well, then why do you want them here if the site allows porn? And then you get upset if they see porn. Like, oh no, the people posting the porn aren't the ones breaking the terms of service here. So that's like the real thing going on there. Okay, Heartstopper. I cover Heartstopper a bit in my well, that was my cat. I cover Heartstopper in my article a bit as well. But when it comes to that, yeah, it's a lot of the same stuff I mentioned before, where it's just the radfem rhetoric getting mixed in, removed from context, and just placed into like the general sphere of people, of just like toxic behavior directed towards Asian media and like Asian people. Like yaoi corrupts. Yaoi has implications that are damaging to the psyche. It causes serious problems in society. Bara is good content made by gays. Yaoi bad because cishet women and there is incest and rape. I'm like, you've never read Bara in your fucking life. Get out. Yeah, and it's the whole energy of it being like, these people aren't really queer. They're not real queers. Yeah, there's some pretty aggressive things in Bara. It's more people should refer to it as like gay comics or gay komi, but because Bara is like a contentious term that a lot of people don't like having their work called that. But yeah, it's like they don't actually know anything they're talking about. They don't read the content. They don't look at the content. They just parrot what they've heard like one blog say and then take it as fact. Yeah, yeah. Like somebody brought up a point that said there should be more safe spaces for kids like Club Penguin and stuff. And somebody else said the problem with those spaces is that some predators target those spaces even more because they know the demographic will be kids. But I remember one of the key things on those websites was above every forum post or DM, there were rules that were like, never give out your personal information, never share this, never share your passwords. It was very adamant about never give out personal information because it was for kids. So there was, and also when it's a website for kids, using certain terms or words can just get you outright blacklisted. There's a lot more restrictions. Whereas, with Twitter, it's somebody could just walk into a porn thread and then start arguing with somebody and they're like, why are you here? Why did you walk into my house and start yelling? With kids sites, there's a lot more moderation. There's a lot more and I know things can happen in those places too, but at the very least they generally have some kind of um what is it, informative post, or also just if they're going to have a primarily child-friendly audience, I'm sure they would get into legal trouble if they didn't have, some kind of precautions. And so, yeah, the funny part about this post is I think at Kitty, who said, wow, this comment makes a lot of assumptions about gay men, is I think it was written by a French woman. Shocking. I know. I think from what I recall from when I was screen capping that stuff. And it's yeah. They love to argue in favor of gay men, except when a gay man's like, actually, I like BL or yaoi, and then they're just like, you don't know what you like. Yeah, like you said, restricted chats, restricted sites. I've heard that Neopets is up again, actually, for all y'all, or at least some company or something made the Flash games work again, etc. Yeah, you don't know what you like sounds like bad victim or bad gay argument. It's all exactly the same. And it's when you realize how all of it's rooted in gender critical radfem stuff, the core tenets are women don't know what they really like. I know what's best for all women. You're really harming yourself because you don't know yourself well enough, and it's all connected to that chain of fuckery. And you hear the same rhetoric and when it comes to BL, when it comes to kink or any kind of stuff like that. And it's and people who try to change the definition and be like, I'm not racist. They're like, when we call it a Fujoshi, we specifically mean women who stalk real life men excessively and hate lesbians. I'm like, well, that's not what a Fujoshi is, okay? Yeah, it's a new form of policing queer people, Jem. That's nice melody. Oh, for the Fujo who asked what my favorite BL was, the first one that comes to mind is Tsukisho, just for the fact that it was my first chaotic comedy BL that I watched in eighth grade. And it had so many tropes that I like. It was so fucking funny. His stupid pink elephant, Toshizo, that would make that weird noise when he's squeezing. And he was fucking crying over it. Yeah, Tsukisho. It's the TV show is PG compared to the games as I know. I never played the games. Slimy. 10 out of 10. Yeah. I remember when I was in like, well, it's funny too, because back then I remember when I was like in middle school and I watched the show and I loved it. And I was like, well, what happens? It just cuts off after this. So I looked at the game and I read like some summary and then I like closed the tab and I was like, that's fine. I don't need that. So it was like ninth grade. And then I never thought about it again. It was so easy. I don't even remember like what happened, because I was just like, I don't need that. This is my canon now. But Kitty said Tsukisha made me get a C on my term paper in Norse mythology because I stayed up all night watching it. Yeah, I wasn't like, oh God. But oof. It's like, oh, what a world. Thank you, Zamzam. You're all wonderful people. You're all lovely people. Nessa people. Oh, there's Kay, Rotten Boys Club. Representing Rotten Boys Club, the OG of trying to rectify misinformation on BL. That you! It you, Kay. That me, that you. So, yeah. As looking at these with other people is like therapeutic because I've seen them so often, but I turn the page and it just says Fujoshis have ruined people's lives. Forget about war. Forget about fascism. The two F's, fascism and Fujoshis. Yeah, it ruined our wallets. But yeah. Yeah, remember when Purge Anti-Antis is the same person who said that they were transphobic and were telling everybody that trans men were Fujoshi, but they weren't telling them about the trans men part? It's all connected. Yeah, this is the same person. It was Purge Anti-Antis. It was a gender critical account. Shocking. Ty, slimy. Did you miss that part? Did you miss that part of Purge Anti-Antis talking about blah, blah, blah. Let me get the thingy. I know where it is. Well, I know what it looks like because I've looked at these pictures 8,000 times. So I just need to find the thumbnail. Aha. I'm close. There it is. This same person. This is like what you would call a Tumblr core memory for people in the Fujo discourse who are like, hey, this is purposeful and it's been going on for years. This account, Purge Anti-Antis, made this happen around 2016, 2017. Basically admitted that they call trans men Fujoshi and use a bunch of slurs and stuff. They were astounded how many people, yeah, right, the She-Ra icon. I was like, no, you don't deserve her. You don't deserve a rip her out of your nasty little hands. Yeah, they were saying how they were astounded how many social justice warriors bandwagon their statements as some pro-LGBT agenda who swallowed their thinly veiled gender critical statements. Yeah. If you're late to the party, slimy, you can watch the YouTube video where I go over all of the anti-trans points. Those are fun. But yeah, so this kind of rhetoric is, it's like ironically to see, oh, the people that hate antis and pro were gender criticals. Yeah. Not very subtle here. They're all straight women pretending to be bi, whatever that means. And then cis being oppressor. So there's a ton of like transphobic anti-Fujoshi posts. I have like over 200 in your archive, whatever it is. I had a link to the archive. See now. I've taken much psychic damage answers to all the discourse and like answers for other people to be like, okay, what is actually going on here? I feel removed enough from the situation to like focus on something like this. Whereas like if it comes to issues of like anti-black racism, I'm like, nope, don't have the energy for that. But I have the energy for this. And anti-Asian racism. It's like the other one's too personal. It's like anti-black racism, been there, have had family members accosted by police and had guns drawn on them. It's like I don't need to get into that. But yeah, so but I archive everything here for people who want the proof, need the proof, and so there's a record. And so people can also utilize it and they don't have to start at ground zero. It's like I looked through all the trash so you wouldn't have to. Yeah, stay in the bubble, Slimy. It's good there. It's like sometimes I'll literally have to like disconnect my internet to be like, I'm going to take a proper day off for myself and I'm not going to open social media to physically rip the internet cord out of the wall. You're welcome. I will always look through trash for you. But yeah, like Dead Noodle said, community is important. And yeah, it's like everybody take care of each other. So we have like a few minutes left. It's already almost 3, but everybody take care of each other and take care of yourself. It's like anytime you need any reassurance, look at these articles and there's plenty more out there. I have like an entire folder I haven't even read yet. Thank you, Jim. You're welcome. You're welcome, Slimy. You're welcome, Corolla. And Brooke, Ari, Zom, Ty, Asher. Thank you, Eroy. Kuma. Like there's also fun topics you can focus on too. Like not everything in this archive is about discourse necessarily, but I have a discourse tag if you want to find things that would relate to that. But there's plenty of stuff you can research about gender and sexuality, self-expression. Thank you, everybody. And you all have a great weekend. Take care of yourselves and focus on the good things. Make, screenshot things you like, compliments, look up good news, follow people that make things you like that make you happy. Focus on boys kissing Denko. Yeah, always take care of yourselves and know that you're not alone and you're not broken. You're all good beings. All of you are good beings. Rainbows all day. Yes. The BL must consume our hearts and minds and souls once more and protect us. Thank you, Casey. It was like, I never had a panel this long before ever, and like had a PowerPoint with all that stuff. So I was like, God, I hope this makes sense. It feels so convoluted to explain because there's so much of it and like 80 layers to it. So I'm just like, how do I make an 80-layer cake into one piece? God. I started this at like, yay! I started this like this whole project like 3.5 years ago as like one whole like book thing, and I had to split it into like 4 papers. I have one paper that's in its final stages. It's about the anti-Fujo stuff. I have another one that's related to that quiz I put out in like 2019, 2020, but like the people took forever to get back to me. But I don't know if I can go over time with the mods. I'm like, it's like 30 seconds to 3. I was like, do I need to cut off real quick?
If you want to go on for a few more minutes, that's fine.
I love all of you though.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome to keep talking for a couple minutes if that's what you want to do. We should wrap up here shortly. And then just so everyone knows, in about half an hour, I think, David Wald is going to be doing his Q&A.
Yes.
But yeah, if you've got like questions you want to ask or anything else you want to say, feel free. Otherwise, we can wrap it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're welcome, Disco.
Well, thank you so much. This was awesome.
I'm glad. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, it's been a long time. Bye, everybody.